This is a place for those of us with a wild soul. Dramatic landscapes, lost trails, endless stars. And surprise! There's wine here too. It's actually the first state in the Northwest to plant wine grapes. And no, we're not talking about Oregon or Washington State. This wine comes from Idaho. Idaho wine is still very much up and coming, so we're going to discover together what's happening here. I want to show you the regions, the grapes, and give a taste of how Idaho's landscape expresses itself in the glass. It's very expressive. First things first, let's get some context on how grapes got to Idaho in the first place. Long before vineyards were here, Idaho's landscapes were nurtured by Native American tribes like the Nez Perce, Coeur d'Alene, Bannock, and Shoshone. In 1805, when Lewis and Clark traveled through Idaho over Lemhi Pass, it marked the beginning of a new era, the settlers. The first grapes were planted by pioneers in 1864. In fact, the first vines were actually Native American grapes called muscadine. Very rare, very cool, from the South, but that's a story for another time. After its success, wine growing took off in Idaho. Incoming German and French settlers planted over 40 different wine varieties around Lewiston, including Petit Verdot and Petit Syrah. Unfortunately, in 1919, Prohibition shut down this nascent industry. What's worse, after the repeal in 1933, only one winery returned, and it stayed like that for almost 40 years. Today, finally, wineries are coming back. There are now around 70 producers here, growing more than 20 different varieties. I want to give you some perspective. That's crazy small! These wines are very, very rare. And Idaho has 3 official AVAs, American Viticultural Areas: Snake River Valley, Lewis-Clark Valley, and Eagle Foothills. So the big question we're all asking is, what are Idaho wines like? I think it's time to try some. So when putting together the Wine Folly region guide to Idaho, we put a call out to Idaho winemakers to submit their wines for this video. And we got some really interesting samples back. These 3 wines, I think, give us a good variety of wines to try to sort of taste what's going on in Idaho. Starting with this Syrah. Now, this wine comes from Lewis-Clark Valley. Now, remember, Lewis-Clark Valley was actually famous before Prohibition, and then the wine culture dried up there, and it's only now just getting its start back. There's only about 100 acres planted here, and I have a Syrah and a Reisling from there that we'll try today. Now, Lewis-Clark Valley, what makes it interesting is it's a little bit lower elevation than the rest of the vineyard areas in Idaho, which means the season is potentially a little bit longer, which means you can plant warmer climate grapes like Syrah. So, another feature about Lewis-Clark Valley that I find interesting are their glacial till soils. These glacial soils have lots of different particles in them, and they're generally well drained, which should produce wines with pretty high aromatics. Let's see if I'm right. Whoa. It's aromatic, but not in the way that I'm expecting. See, most wines from Washington State have explosive fruit aromatics. This has explosive aromatics, but I smell black peppers and violets. It's very savory, maybe just with a touch of blackberry. Unexpected. I usually get aromatics like this in other regions like, say, France. Let's give it a taste. Tannin face. This wine definitely has high tannin, so there's a lot of structure there and really good acidity as well. So we've got tannin structure, acidity. These are things that can make this wine age-worthy, and it's got this very savory nose. The alcohol at 14.5, I think, is pretty in balance for Syrah in general. So I would say for a Syrah wine, it's a savory style. And Syrah isn't the only red grape that grows here. You'll also find varieties like Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Cabernet Franc. So we might be able to expect to taste some more savory, earthy styles coming from this region if you find one. The next wine that I want to try is a Riesling. Now, Riesling is one of those grapes that absolutely loves the sun, but it doesn't like to get too hot. So we need a region with tons of sun that manages to stay cool, and this is definitely the case in Idaho. Because of Idaho's continental climate and short growing season, we get lots of sun right when we need it, and then it cools down at night, which helps maintain acidity in these wines. Because we have a whole season, this grape is very hardy and it can survive those icy cold winters. All right, same region, Lewis-Clark Valley. So is this gonna be a savory Riesling as well? Yes. I do smell lime peel and apricot, but I also get a lot more minerality than I would expect from an American wine. Whoa. On the palate, this wine definitely has a punch up in body, showing us that we're definitely getting perfectly ripe Riesling grapes here. Really good texture across the palate. It is just slightly off dry. Very, very well made wine in my opinion. Delicious. And I expect this wine to develop more petrol-like notes coming up here pretty soon, because it is just like right there on the edge, like developing that kind of gassiness that you get from an aged Riesling, which I think will be really exciting to try from a Lewis-Clark Valley Riesling like this one. Now, this last wine comes to us from Snake River Valley. This is the largest wine growing region in Idaho. It has the most planted grape varieties, and it's also the highest elevation, getting up to 3,000 feet in elevation, which means we have a stronger diurnal shift. Hot days, cold nights, which should maintain the acidity in wine. This is especially good for white wines and especially good for grapes like this one, Chardonnay, made in a sparkling style. On the nose, whew, wow, again, super aromatic. Now, Snake River Valley not only has glacial soils, but it also has volcanic soils. So you can expect wines to deliver some savory notes. This is very good for red grapes like Syrah and Tempranillo. But in this wine, I get really beautiful mango notes. It almost smells like peaches and cream. This particular wine sat on the lees in terroir, so sparkling wine method, that over 42 months, which is longer than some champagne. Let's give it a taste. Whoa, really frothy, huge bubbles, a rich mango note on the palate, but bombastic acidity like we need in sparkling wines. The finish is lean and dry. It's a well-balanced wine. I'm surprised. Idaho. You wouldn't think that this is a place to make high quality wines, but we have all the conditions that we need. We've got a continental climate. We've got high elevation for good acidity and age-worthiness, and we have interesting soils like volcanic soils and glacial soils to produce interesting aromatics in these wines. I'm excited to see what's gonna happen. Get yourself out there to Idaho and try some of these wines. They're unexpected and interesting and well worthy of Northwest wine attention. And if you're interested to learn more, I would highly recommend checking out Wine Folly's Region Guide on Idaho. You can find the producers, the wines, and learn more about the terroir here and find exactly what you're looking for. I hope this region was fascinating and interesting to you. It certainly was fascinating to me. Until next time, happy tasting. And what region should Christine and I cover next? Let us know. And until next time, peace out.